He was born into slavery, not metaphorically, literally. His name was Epictetus. And before he became one of the most respected Stoic philosophers in history, he belonged to someone else, his body, his time, even his voice. One day, his master twisted his leg during a beating. Epictetus calmly said, "If you keep pressing, you'll break it." And the man did. Bone snapped. Epictetus didn't scream, didn't beg. He looked his master in the eye and said, "I told you so." Years later, when he became free, people asked him how he stayed so composed. He said, "It's not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." Here's why that matters. Because every day, modern men still speak from that same broken place. Except now, the chains aren't on our bodies, they're in our words. Sentences like, "That's just how I am. I already know that. It's not my problem." Each one sounds small, but they reveal something bigger, how we choose to see the world and ourselves. And that's what this video is about. 6 things an intelligent man never says, not because he's trying to look wise, but because he's fighting to stay free. Free from pride, free from ego, free from the quiet lies that keep us stuck. So the question is, are you repeating words that keep you strong or ones that keep you small? Let's find out. That's just the way things are. There's a sentence that sounds harmless when you first hear it, maybe even wise, but deep down, it's dangerous. It's this. That's just the way things are. You hear it in passing. A man stuck in a job he hates, one that drains the life out of him every single day. He wakes up tired, he comes home angry, and he convinces himself he's just doing what a man is supposed to do, that this is just how the world works. But it's not the job that breaks him. It's the story he tells himself about it, that nothing can change, that this is his fate, that he just needs to get through it. I once knew a man like that. Let's call him Daniel. He worked long hours in a place that didn't value him. His ideas were ignored, his effort went unnoticed, but instead of questioning the system or finding a new path, he shrugged and said, "Well, that's life." Year after year, he said the same thing, and slowly, he stopped dreaming. He stopped trying. He stopped caring. Not all at once, just a little bit at a time, like rust forming on something once strong, quiet, slow, destructive. See, defeat doesn't always show up with tears or tantrums. Sometimes it shows up with a tired smile and a quiet sentence. That's just how it is. But when a man says that, what he's really saying is, "I've given up." It sounds like acceptance, but it's really resignation. The Stoics had a word for this kind of thinking. They called it misjudgment. Epictetus, a slave who became one of the greatest philosophers in history, said something simple but powerful. It's not events that disturb us, but our judgment about them. Think about that. It's not the job, not the unfair boss, not the broken system. It's the way we see those things, the way we choose to respond. Intelligent men, real thinkers, real doers, they don't just take the world as it is and lie down in it. They study it, they question it, they ask, does this still serve me? And if the answer is no, they make a change. They don't stay stuck just because staying stuck feels easier. They face the discomfort, the fear, the unknown, and they move. Here's the truth most people avoid. If you stay in a situation just because it's familiar, eventually that familiarity becomes your prison. I've lived it too. There was a time in my life when I felt boxed in, not by anyone else, just by this quiet voice in my head that kept whispering, "This is just how things are." And the more I listened to it, the smaller my world got. I stopped asking hard questions. I stopped reaching. I told myself I was being realistic, but really I was being scared. That's the problem with that sentence. It gives pain permission to stay. It makes struggle feel normal. And once you normalize pain, you forget that life was meant to be lived, not just tolerated. So what's the alternative? You don't have to change everything overnight. You don't even have to fix the whole problem. You just have to stop agreeing with the lie. Stop saying, "This is just how it is," and start asking, what small thing can I do to shift this? What's one part I can control? That one question. That's where movement begins. The Stoics weren't about fantasy. They didn't pretend everything was fine. They looked life straight in the face and said, let's deal with it, honestly, calmly, and on our own terms. They knew that pain is real, but staying stuck in it, that's optional. Marcus Aurelius ran an empire. Every day he faced betrayal, sickness, war, disappointment. And yet in his private notes, what we now call meditations, he wrote over and over again, you are not a passive creature. You are made to act. You are made to endure. You are made to choose. And so are you. So if you've been telling yourself, that's just the way things are, maybe it's time to challenge that voice. Not with rage, not with reckless change, but with quiet courage. The kind that says, I don't know what the next step is yet, but I'm willing to look for it. That's what intelligent men do. They don't settle for a life they didn't choose. They don't let habits, fear, or apathy run the show. They live with intention. They speak with clarity. They ask better questions. And when something isn't working, they don't explain it away. They face it, and they move. Because that's not just how things are. That's how a man becomes wise. That's not fair. There's a moment most of us face in life, the kind that stings in a quiet, bitter way. You do everything right. You show up early, you stay late, you pour your heart into your work, your craft, your relationships, and then, without warning, someone else gets the opportunity you were hoping for, the praise, the promotion, the win. And that thought creeps in, the one that feels like truth. That's not fair. It's a small sentence, but it carries weight. Because deep down, it's not just about fairness, it's about worth. It's about feeling like your effort should have meant something and suddenly realizing the world didn't seem to notice. A friend once went through something like this. He'd worked hard, sacrificed, stayed consistent. Everyone around him said he was the obvious choice for a leadership role. But when the time came, he was passed over. No explanation, no feedback, nothing. Just silence. And that silence grew into frustration. He didn't throw a fit. He didn't storm out. But something inside him shifted. He stopped pushing, stopped caring the same way. And eventually, he started saying things like, why bother? This place doesn't reward hard work anyway. He wasn't entirely wrong. That moment wasn't fair. But what happened next was more important than what happened to him, because what happened next was that he let the bitterness win. That one experience became the ceiling of what he allowed himself to reach for. See, life is not fair. It never has been. And if you spend your days waiting for fairness, you will grow tired long before you grow strong. Complaining about unfairness is like yelling at gravity. You might be technically right, but you're wasting breath. The universe doesn't owe us balance. It doesn't hand out rewards based on who worked the hardest or who wanted it the most. That's not how it works. What Stoic men understand, what truly intelligent men figure out over time, is that fairness is a distraction. Not because it doesn't matter, but because it's outside your control. And Stoicism is all about focusing on what you can control. Marcus Aurelius put it simply, you have power over your mind, not outside events. You don't control the decisions of others. You don't control who gets chosen, who gets praised, or who gets overlooked, but you do control how you respond. That's where your power lives. When someone lets bitterness take the wheel, their energy shifts, their attitude darkens, their performance suffers. Not because they weren't capable, but because they started putting all their focus into what should have happened instead of what they could do next. Fairness becomes a trap when you let it steal your momentum. There are people who rise even when the odds are against them, not because they're lucky, not because life suddenly started treating them fairly, but because they refused to waste energy chasing fairness. They stayed focused on their habits, their mindset, their mission. That's what sets intelligent men apart. They don't wait to be rescued. They don't obsess over recognition. They don't waste time hoping someone else will make it right. They ask themselves, what's still in my hands? What can I improve, even now? And then they act. I've had my own experiences where I wanted to shout that life wasn't fair. But those moments taught me something deeper. You don't grow by getting what you want. You grow by responding well when you don't. So the next time life doesn't give you what you feel you earned, don't spiral. Don't feed the resentment, just pause, breathe, and remind yourself you still have the power to choose what happens next. Because fairness might be rare, but focus, that's available to you at all times. And that's the kind of strength that can't be taken from you, only built by you. If this resonates with you, make sure to like, share and subscribe to Level Stoic channel. Stick around, we're just getting started. I can't change. One of the most dangerous things a man can believe about himself is this: I can't change. It sounds honest. It sounds like he's just being real about who he is. But let's call it what it really is, a quiet excuse to stay the same. You've probably seen it in someone you know, a friend, a family member, maybe even in the mirror. He still acts the same way he did 10 years ago, same bad habits, same short temper, same lazy routines. And if you bring it up, he shrugs and says, "That's just how I am." Or worse, "I can't help it." But here's the truth. He can help it. He just doesn't want to face the work that change requires. Because growth, that's not a gift life hands you. It's not something you stumble into when the stars line up. Growth is a choice. And not just once, but every single day. Intelligent men understand this. They know that refusing to change isn't strength. It's just fear dressed up as stubbornness. Because saying "I can't change" is really just a polite way of saying "I'd rather stay weak." It's easier to keep doing what you've always done. It's comfortable. It's familiar. And we all know comfort has a sneaky way of making us believe that staying the same is safer than trying to grow. But what comfort doesn't tell you is that staying the same comes with a cost, a slow, quiet cost that builds over time. Missed chances, relationships that go cold, confidence that fades, potential that dries up. Not because life was unfair, but because the man holding the wheel refused to turn it. A friend once told me he didn't believe people could really change. He said most people are just wired a certain way, and that's that. But I watched him over the years. I saw the same patterns wreck his relationships, his health, his future. And every time something went wrong, he'd shake his head and say, "Guess I'll never learn." He thought he was being humble, but really, he was building a prison out of his own refusal to grow. And that's what Stoicism tries to shake us out of. It doesn't tell you to be perfect. It tells you to be willing to look at your flaws without shame, willing to ask, "What can I do differently?" Willing to choose effort over ego. Seneca, one of the great Stoic thinkers, said, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." That's the mindset of a wise man. Not one who thinks he has all the answers, but one who stays curious, who knows he's not finished yet, who knows that becoming the man you're meant to be takes time and humility and the courage to face yourself honestly. Because change isn't a betrayal of who you are, it's the path to becoming who you were always capable of being. There's a kind of quiet power in choosing growth, not flashy, not loud, just consistent, just real. Intelligent men don't change because they hate who they are. They change because they respect themselves too much to stay stuck. They know that the past doesn't get the final say. The future is still being written, and their choices today hold the pen. So if you've ever told yourself, "I can't change," ask yourself this instead. Is that really true? Or is it just easier to stay comfortable? Because the difference between the man who grows and the man who stays the same isn't talent. It's not luck. It's not fate. It's willingness. Willingness to face what's hard, willingness to start over, willingness to fall and get back up again and again. I've seen men reinvent themselves in their 50s, 60s, even 70s, not because they had to, but because they chose to. I've seen others give up in their 30s, convinced it was too late or too hard or just not who they were. The difference wasn't the situation, it was the mindset. So when that voice shows up, the one that says, "This is just who I am," don't listen to it like it's truth. Listen to it like it's a warning. A warning that you're choosing comfort over growth. A warning that you're settling for less when more is still possible. The Stoics believed the highest goal wasn't comfort, it was self-mastery. And self-mastery starts with honesty. The kind of honesty that doesn't flinch when it sees a flaw. The kind that says, "I can do better, and I will." You don't need to change everything overnight. You just need to start. One habit, one decision, one better choice at a time. That's what intelligent men do. They don't wait for life to shape them. They shape themselves. Because growth isn't something that happens to you. It's something you choose, over and over again. And the man who chooses to grow, he's never finished. He's just getting started. I deserve better. There's a sentence that slips out when life doesn't give us what we want. We say it when we feel unseen, unappreciated, overlooked. We say, "I deserve better." Now on the surface, that might sound reasonable, fair even. But let's slow down and look a little deeper. Because sometimes when a man says, "I deserve better," what he really means is, why isn't the world giving me what I think I'm owed? And that mindset, that quiet sense of entitlement, that's what keeps him stuck. It blinds him to what actually builds a better life. I knew someone who struggled with this. He kept saying he deserved more respect, more loyalty, more recognition. But here's what I noticed. He wasn't showing up the way he used to. He wasn't giving his best anymore. He was coasting on old effort, expecting new rewards, and slowly the people around him started to pull back. Not because they didn't care, but because they could feel the shift. He wasn't focused on what he gave. He was only focused on what he wanted. That's the danger of entitlement. It's sneaky. It makes you believe that past effort guarantees present rewards. It makes you think that showing up once or twice years ago means people should still treat you like you're on fire. But the truth is simple. What you think you deserve doesn't matter. What you consistently do, that's what defines you. The Stoics had no patience for entitlement. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." In other words, don't talk about what you should have. Show who you are by how you act. Don't complain about not being valued. Earn value daily. You want more respect? Be more dependable. You want more loyalty? Be the kind of person others want to follow. You want more recognition? Bring more to the table without asking for applause. The world doesn't hand out rewards just because you want them. It responds to action. It responds to execution. A lot of men fall into this trap without realizing it. They do something great once, then expect praise forever. Or they compare their effort to someone else's and decide they've done enough. But that's not how strong men think. Intelligent men don't count how much they've given. They stay focused on what needs to be done now, not yesterday, not 10 years ago. Now that's not being a pushover, that's being disciplined, that's being present, that's being the kind of man who doesn't need to demand respect because his actions speak louder than any complaint ever could. I've been guilty of it too. Times when I felt like I was doing enough, but in reality I was just doing the bare minimum and hoping it would still be good enough. Times when I expected appreciation without asking myself if I'd really earned it lately. And what I've learned, sometimes painfully, is that the gap between what you think you deserve and what you're actually showing up for will eat away at your confidence. The fix? Shift your focus. Stop asking what you're owed. Start asking what you're building. An intelligent man doesn't wait to be seen. He makes himself undeniable. Not with noise, not with ego, but with consistency, with character, with results. He doesn't need to remind people what he deserves. His effort does that for him. That's how respect is earned. That's how trust is built. That's how a man becomes someone others rely on. Not just once, but over and over again. So if you've been walking around thinking, I deserve better, here's your challenge. Stop looking outward. Start looking inward. Not in a blaming way, not in a harsh, judgmental way, but with honesty. Ask yourself, am I giving what I expect in return? Am I showing up like someone who's undeniable? Am I still putting in the work, or am I just coasting on old effort? Because the moment you stop expecting and start executing, everything changes. That's how Stoic men lead, not by shouting about what they should have, but by becoming so grounded, so steady, so consistently excellent that the world can't ignore them even if it tries. So let others chase recognition, let others keep score. You build, you lead, you become. Because a man who does the work doesn't need to say, I deserve better. He just lives better. And that's what real strength looks like. That's not my problem. There's a sentence that slips out of the mouths of men who think they're being smart, practical, or efficient, but really, they're just stepping away from responsibility without realizing what it costs. The sentence sounds simple. It goes, that's not my problem. And maybe at first glance it isn't. Maybe it's not your job, not your fault, not your mess. But the truth is, the moment you say, that's not my problem, you've made a decision, not just to stay out of it, but to let someone else carry the weight, even if it hurts them. I remember seeing this happen, not in a dramatic way, but in one of those quiet moments that reveal a person's character. Something went wrong on a team project. A mistake that wasn't obvious until the very last minute. There was confusion, frustration, blame flying around. And one guy, instead of helping fix it, stepped back and said, hey, not my problem, I did my part. And you could feel the shift, not just in how others looked at him, but in how he carried himself afterward. He had protected himself, sure, but he had also shown everyone and himself that he wasn't someone you could count on when things got real. That's the hidden cost of saying, that's not my problem. It's not just about skipping effort, it's about shrinking your role in the world. It's about choosing comfort over character. The Stoics saw this clearly. Marcus Aurelius, who had more on his plate than most of us ever will, once wrote, "What injures the hive, injures the bee." What he meant is this: we're all connected. Your family, your workplace, your community, these aren't separate systems you can dip in and out of when it suits you. When something breaks and you're in a position to help, stepping away doesn't make you smarter, it just makes you smaller. Intelligent men understand this. They don't look at a fire and ask, is that my fire to put out? They ask, is there something I can do to help? They don't wait for credit. They don't worry about blame. They step in when it matters, especially when it's inconvenient. Because leadership isn't just about being in charge, it's about taking ownership. And ownership doesn't always come with a title. Sometimes it's as simple as choosing to care, even when no one's asking you to. I've watched men pass up these moments because they thought staying quiet would protect them. They thought keeping their hands clean meant they were staying sharp. But all it really did was make them forgettable, replaceable, the kind of man no one turns to when it counts. But I've also seen men step into messes that weren't their fault, take on problems they didn't cause, and offer help when they had every excuse to look the other way. And those are the men people remember. Those are the ones who build trust without saying a word. And that's the point Stoicism makes again and again. Responsibility isn't about fault, it's about response. You don't get stronger by avoiding problems. You get stronger by choosing to respond to them, even when you could walk away. So the next time something goes wrong and your first thought is, that's not my problem, I want you to pause. Ask yourself a better question. Is there something I can do here, even if it's not required? Because that question, that willingness to care, is what separates intelligent men from the ones who are just getting by. You're not here to do the bare minimum. You're not here to protect your image. You're here to lead by example. to leave things better than you found them, to be someone others can count on, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's not. And when you do that, when you stop thinking in terms of mine and not mine, and start thinking in terms of what needs to be done, you rise. Not just in reputation, but in strength, in respect, in peace. Because you'll know that no matter what life throws at you, you didn't step back. You stepped up. And that's the kind of man the world needs more of. It's too late. There's a belief that sneaks in slowly, usually after life doesn't go the way you thought it would. Maybe you didn't reach a goal. Maybe something ended, a relationship, a job, a dream you once carried around like fire in your chest. And somewhere along the way, you started telling yourself a lie that sounds reasonable. It's too late. But here's the truth that too many men forget. It's not too late. It's just later than you planned. And that's still time. I've seen this in men of all ages, 40s, 50s, even 60s, guys who gave up on finding love again, or switching careers, or chasing something they used to care deeply about. They convinced themselves the window had closed, that the moment had passed, that their chance was gone and they had missed it. But time wasn't the enemy. Their belief was. They didn't stop because it was actually too late. They stopped because they felt like it was too late. And that's the kind of feeling Stoicism warns us about. Epictetus said, "Don't let the force of an impression carry you away." In simple words, that means just because a thought or emotion feels powerful, that doesn't mean it's true. Feeling tired doesn't mean you're done. Feeling behind doesn't mean you failed. And feeling like it's too late doesn't mean it is. The real danger isn't time running out. It's stopping before it actually does. I once knew someone who used to love music. He'd play guitar every day in his 20s, wrote songs, even played a few small shows. But after life got busy, marriage, work, bills, he let it all go. Years passed. And when you asked him about it, he'd just laugh and say, "I'm too old for all that now." But you could still see the way his eyes lit up when someone brought out a guitar at a party. You could feel the part of him that still missed it. And the only thing keeping him from picking it back up wasn't age. It was the belief that he had missed his shot. And that's the lie too many men swallow. We treat time like a finish line that gets pulled away the moment we fall behind. But intelligent men know better. They understand that time doesn't decide your worth. Your choices do. A man who starts something new at 50 is not behind. He's just beginning from where he is. And there is power in that. A man who opens his heart after heartbreak is not late. He's simply ready now in a way he wasn't before. A man who decides to change direction, chase something real, or grow into a version of himself he can respect, that man is not too late. He's right on time. Because as long as you're breathing, you're still in the fight. And intelligent men don't measure progress by a clock, they measure it by character. They ask, am I moving forward, even slowly? Am I doing something that matters, even if it's quiet? Am I living like someone who still has something to give? And if the answer is yes, then no matter what the calendar says, you're not done. Stoicism isn't about rushing. It's not about panic or pressure. It's about staying grounded, focused, and brave enough to keep going. Even when the timeline looks different than you imagined, even when it's not easy, even when you wish you had started sooner, because starting now is always better than never starting at all. So if you've been carrying around that belief that it's too late for you to change, to try again, to make something new, this is your moment to drop it. Not because someone else said you can do it, but because deep down, you know you're not finished yet. You know there's more in you. And the only way to prove that to the world is to start. Even now, even if it's quiet, even if it's small. Because no man is ever truly out of time unless he decides to be. And if you're ready to take your emotional control to the next level, don't miss our next video. Stop letting emotions control you with these 8 Stoic lessons. It's packed with practical tips to help you stay grounded and master your emotions, no matter what life throws your way. See you there.